Yeah.
Hello,
Oh,
everybody. Hello. Hello. Welcome back to Retrospection Chats. This is our new series on Fireside Cast where we're just doing some lore and just interviewing people about their TF2 careers in the competitive community. Today we have Marxist and we have Ro, who graciously volunteered to interview with us. Ro, I'll let you take it away from here.
yeah, they had to drag me into this, dude. I hate working with this guy so much. Like, Marxist is such a baby, and no, I love Marxist. I've been a co-caster of Marxists for many years. I bonded with him in a lot of opportunities after casts and gotten to know him very well. And he's just a really fun guy to talk. So this is going to be like smooth sailing. Hope you all are excited. Marxist, you just quick say hello to the people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, hello. And this is also the first time I've ever used a camera for anything because I got new internet, Ro. So we
Yeah.
may as well join 2012 or 2011 when people started streaming with cameras.
Oh man,
So,
2012. That was a great year for TF2 streams. Don't get me started.
well, the world ended that year too. So, this
Yeah.
is all just the simulation
Yeah, this is
afterwards.
the alternate timeline. You know what would have happened anyway. Folks, Marxist has been in the game for probably longer than most people know. Uh, I wanted to kind of like start things off just so that people have like an understanding of like where you were coming from before you started playing TF2. Like, what were you doing? First off, what year did you start playing TF2? And then like, what was the atmosphere like for you? Like, were you in school? Were you working? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I was in college. I think it was my freshman year. Yeah, because the game came out in 2007. It was my freshman year in the summer, and my best friend from high school had bought the orange box. He had manipulated me into getting Half-Life 2. I had actually never finished Half-Life 1 because when I was in high school and that was like the popular thing, I live in a very rural area. And so the internet here was actually substandard 56K. I was on 45.5K internet, and it was the company that provided it was called Skynet. So that's fun, at least, I guess. But I did not finish Half-Life because while I was playing, you look around on the internet for info, and I found out about Counter-Strike and the original TF2, and I spent all my time playing those. And so he had manipulated me into getting Half-Life 2, so I went ahead and got the orange box because we played some 2 Fort one summer day at his dad's house that was near to where I went to college, and I was instantly hooked. And unfortunately could only play when I was at school because we were still there was no DSL even where I grew up.
Wow.
So I could only play when I was at school, and then when I went home in the summer, which was that summer, I couldn't play. I had to do offline stuff. So then the following year, which would have been my sophomore year of college, they finally got DSL at my mom's place, and that was as good as the internet ever got. I think it was that original DSL was like less than 3 megabits down, and I started playing TF2 pretty avidly that summer. So that'd be 2008, and had been playing during the school year and stuff. I remember vaguely, like when I started playing TF2 almost every day, it would be about the time the first class update came out. So that'd be when they reworked Medic and did the Blutsauger and stuff, if I have all my facts straight.
Yeah.
And I started playing and Goldrush came out. And you'll see me if you're on my friends list, you'll see me play TF2 every couple weeks, and it is exclusively Gold Rush still. So, like, that's just like that map became my home. I played Gold Rush all the time. I went to Lotus servers, and then I
Oh man.
eventually discovered SourceOP, and SourceOP had a Dallas-based 24/7 Gold Rush server with 32 players because the game wasn't all clogged up with crap at the time. And so you could run 16v16 servers without it being trash.
Yeah, that class limit has been in place since, or that player limit has been in place until literally just this year, where they've upped it to 100 players, and now servers can run 50v50. So yeah, for the time that was a big thing, and we've just been stuck with it. 16 has always been the limit for each team.
Well, and there was a phase there where 16v16 was borderline unplayable because of how all the server side calculations.
Yeah, so many calculations. Yep.
But anyways, so SourceOP as a community actually has a pretty interesting place in TF2 history if you're not familiar with it, because SourceOP actually ran 2 servers and 3 servers in a forum. 2 were map rotation, and a lot of very early Sixes players came out of those rotation servers because we were running our 5CP maps, and those guys were pretty familiar with those. And then the Goldrush server, and then they started doing a trade server, and I assume probably most people are familiar with SourceOP because of the trade, because that community really went into the whole hat trading thing. I remember at one point there was a guy that played on our Goldrush server that bragged that he was making over $1,000 a month just on flipping hats.
Oh yeah.
And that was pretty normal at the time. And then while we were there playing the Goldrush every night, also you had to purchase with money reserved slots for that server, because if you wanted to just play on a Thursday night, you had to wait over a half an hour. And so you had to purchase for $5 a month priority access so that you could actually get in when you wanted to. However, they had to up the price and make a second tier, because on Friday and Saturday nights, if you wanted to play on SourceOP 24/7 Goldrush, just for perspective, your wait would be over 2 hours. And even if you bought the reserved slot, the entire server, all 32, would have reserved slots. And so you couldn't get in because there was no one to kick out. So they had to up and make a second tier where you went to $10 a month, where you could kick out people who'd only paid $5 to play on the server. Also at that time, there were several active clans on the server. And so we made our own, it was called the Big Goldrush League. And you'd get your clan together and play Goldrush against each other in a just flat out just play. There wasn't like a best of 3 or whatever. You just flat out played it, and whoever won the map would get through. So there was sort of like this proto competitive scene percolating there. Sorry, my phone will periodically go off. I have to look at it in case it's like a person that's gonna freak out at work. Anyways, so then also there were competitive players who would drop in to the SourceOP servers pretty frequently that were well known, like Carnage would regularly come on the server. Sizzling Calamari, if you're familiar with Sizzling Stats, was a regular on SourceOP. So I've known Sizz probably for 12 years. There were a bunch of other people like that on there who had done relatively bigger things. So we're running the Big Goldrush League, and then the Highlander tournament through ETF2L happened, where they gave out the first medals for TF2. So I played on team because the guy who's now a PhD in political science filled out the form wrong. And so our team name was Team. And we played a couple of matches on ETF2L's first Highlander tournament, and that exploded the competitive scene. I don't think anybody who played more than a couple nights a week didn't try to join some kind of team.
Yeah.
And then the season 10... So we were all in Highlander. We were practicing Highlander. We were building Highlander teams. There were, all the clans that had 16 players on them ostensibly were trying to build out sub 9v9 teams. And then for me, the season 10 frag video came out. What's the name of the team? Fragile was on it. And I was like, well, sixes looks like way, way more fun. Justin made the frag video, and so then I'm coming from Goldrush server 1, so
right.
literally not a soul played Scout ever.
Right.
there was one guy named Zelaroth who played Scout, and everybody kind of hated him because Scout was worthless, and every now and again he would get a kill or do something, and then you felt real dumb. So we had to recruit 2 people who mainly played Sniper to play Scout, and we got him. If you're familiar with older Highlander, you probably know Hugh Laurie. He would have played on a lot of S-Dog's teams. S-Dog was on the server. I actually met S-Dog in real life. If you're up for Highlander, he came through my town on the way to visit family, and we hooked up at McDonald's. I met his wife, too. Then I got some guys who played Soldier, which again wasn't really that popular, but there were people who played Soldier. I played Med, and then we got a demo, of course. We actually started with 2 demos, just because, and then we cut it down to 1. And at the time, there were 2 free leagues to join, and it was UGC. So we joined UGC, which actually started first. The way seasons were done was slightly different, and so UGC started like 2 weeks before CEVO did. And CEVO had actually died. CEVO had been the premier. For example, that frag video I mentioned, that was, I think, if I recall correctly, a CEVO frag video, or if not, like a couple seasons before, CEVO had been the preeminent place until Invite and ESEA got going, and I'd say a year. And then CEVO had basically collapsed as an organization. They still had a pretty active CS scene, but then they were trying to come back to TF2, and so they did this open league, and it was a disaster. I would use a stronger word, but I'm not sure if I should swear on this cast or whatever, or this interview.
A bluster club.
It was an absolute shit show. And that's actually comes in later when CEVO revived during the ESEA controversy. I had zero confidence in it. And even though they had Lang and that, they had recruited good, passionate people, zero confidence. The organization as itself was an absolute disaster. And I think history kind of bears out that you can have the best team under you, but if the people running the organization just suck and have no idea what they're doing, it will never work. Because they will constantly hamper the efforts of the passionate people, and they'll eventually quit, which is what happened. So anyways, so then I was like whole hog into TF2 and sixes in general. And we built that team up. We ended up winning the UGC season. The team that we beat actually had Cadus on it. He was playing from Europe, to be fair, so it was laggy disadvantage. Demo. Yeah. But they had asked him to play on their UGC team as a joke, and he did. They were undefeated until they met us because they had Cadus on their team. I don't think anybody else from that team really stuck around. They had a scout player that went by the player tag Red Remis. And I'm still Facebook friends with her because she did some other things and invited people to lands and tried to do was very passionate about the scene. The reason everybody became friends with her was because of the Tony Pepperoni incident of 2014 or 13, where a guy's girlfriend unplugged his Ethernet cord mid-match and ruined his TF2 career, and she valiantly recorded the entire affair. As she was on the team. Anyways, so that was a whole meme, but then everybody took it down because it was really cruel to Tony Pepperoni.
Yeah. Man, you're unlocking so many. I wasn't in the TF2 scene, for context, just little bit of my background. I'll just steal the spotlight real quick. I got into TF2 in 2011 when my friend got me into Steam. I literally had no internet or a home computer until I was in high school. So like I was introduced to like Steam and everything like that. My friend introduced me to TF2. My first like 400 hours were instant respawn 2 Fort with low grav, and I loved it, and I miss those days so much. Anyway, 2012 I started watching competitive because I wanted to make a competitive, what I didn't realize was Highlander at the time, a Highlander team for a competitive 2 Fort in the server I was in. Because I was like, man, there's so many good players on this team this is the best heavy in our server. This is the best demo. And so I got interested in Highlander and somehow found my way towards TF2 streams. And Pure was one of the first few streamers I started watching. And that was the year of I-46. And so I joined the competitive scene and started watching competitive TF2 pretty much right when it really blew up, which was the what I would consider the blowing up of I-46 and the phenomenal thing that was. So you saying things like, Nick the Fragile, Sizzling Calamari, all these other people who have cemented their names in TF2 history. It's so cool hearing like who they are like before I joined TF2 and all that stuff.
Well, and I think also the scene was much bigger then. Everybody really knows everybody now, but it was not difficult. Like if you wanted to talk to Platinum or Seagull, it was doable. You just had to like ask. It wasn't like a wall of separation between a person who was randomly in open and elsewhere. Like an example, this is a great story, and I can swear too. One of our scouts that we got had actually been mentored on Scout by vhalin, because after Check 6 went undefeated, and they had their legendary undefeated season and the trophy and all that. vhalin I'd never really fully understood the arrangement here, but vhalin had offered or promised in exchange for financial help mentoring. And a guy from our server who went by Goomba or Kitty Zoink won. And as a result, vhalin mentored him on Scout for a season. He had also been friends with some other guys through like YZ50 and some of those guys through Quake. He was an avid Quake dueler as well as like a pub player. So like people who were important knew him. He also was really good friends with Dummy, and because they had dueled a lot. And so vhalin took him in, but on the condition was whenever he went into the Check 6 Mumble, for as long as it existed, they had that extra season, he was to be referred to as vhalin's shitty, and that was his gamer tag as well. And every TF2 server was that he was vhalin's shitty, and that was all anyone was allowed to call him. And so that was my one of my first Scout players. There were other teams that had gone really well, and that was sort of created a pipeline. Like I recruited a roamer who had been mentored by the team that won Open, and they had gone undefeated and went. That was back IM didn't exist, so if you won Open, typically that meant you were a mid-tier or above invite team, and so that carried a lot of weight. There was also there were people ahead of me because they had gotten into comp a lot earlier. The comp scene, as I came to look at it later, really got moving pretty early in TF2's history. And those are the really old casts, and Vinny DeBoss and that kind of stuff. Like that was already happening, and the upper echelon of the scene had already existed from CEVO and then crossed over to ESEA. So all those guys were already kind of there. And there was a really clear pipeline of essentially circle jerks where there was a Mumble, and then there was the top tier team, and then a crappier team that hung out in that Mumble and got mentored, and then an even yet crappier team that was kind of being worked with by the bigger team. And it all created a feeder pipeline so that as people dropped out of the scene, you already knew these lower level guys and you would just move them on up. And that, I think, also created a big division in the scene because like you had X, Y, and Z circle jerks, and everybody was partisan towards their segment of it. And so that made the competitive aspect even better, because it wasn't just classic mix-up playing, it was classic mix-up and the 3 teams that were all kind of hanging around them at all times. Or you would have people that were like, I can't do invite anymore, and they'd go play at a lower level team for fun, and then that would draw in that other random group of guys. A great example of that is Mackie couldn't play for a while because his girlfriend or wife, I don't remember, was a nurse and got moved to wacky shifts, and so she had to sleep during TF2 times, and if he was too loud, she would end him. So he could only communicate by whispering, and so he chose not to play an invite that season and went into IM. But those streams were pretty funny. But yeah, 2012, it was like a revolution because Justin TV converted into Twitch, and then people started streaming themselves playing TF2, and that was huge. I think 2012 was probably the biggest, and you had a lot of things coming all together because Highlander there were like 400 Highlander teams in UGC, and Sixes was gigantic. We had like record attendance in Open and ESEA, so that was like the apex of the scene. And we had Twitch John, who hooked up with us right away, was actually
Huge
from
advocate.
One of the SourceOP servers. I had known Twitch. He went by Tankman. But Twitch
John.
Yeah, he went by Tankman in the pubs. I know there's a newer TF2 player that goes by Tankman. They're not related. But yeah, John had got a job at Twitch just on his own and was like, TF2 is really cool. I play it a lot. And so I had gotten hooked up with him a little bit. He actually made a Sixes team around that time with people from SourceOP. My favorite demo man from the Goldrush server was actually there. So we, because he knew where to find a good demo, because that's all you can really play on Goldrush. And so it was this whole ecosystem. Another really humorous thing that I don't know that a ton of people know about is the guy in charge of SourceOP was named Drunken Fool, and he was hated on the Steam forums because he did unusual things. One of them was when hats first started dropping, you had to be logged in and there wasn't a limit to the hats you could get. And so he created a client and gave it to SourceOP members who had paid the fee. Well, I was one of them. And that would log you in remotely. So I would open up his client, which logged me into TF2 without having to be in the server, and then I would be rewarded with hats when I logged in. That was considered an exploit by Valve. They gave out the cheater's lament to everyone but us and took all our hats away.
Yep. This is legendary lore in TF2 history. Just the cheater's lament and the AFK grinding for
I used the client, so I actually, in fact, it was just a CMD prompt, like it was a black screen, and you just hit enter, and it logged you into his server. Mm-hmm. But then the other thing that he did was when they did the Golden Wrench giveaway, he had actually deconstructed the algorithm that they used. And when I saw the announcement that he got the Golden Wrench, I was like, oh no. He's going to get us all banned. And they took his Golden Wrench and banned him and then gave him a job at Valve.
Right? That's the Valve that I know, is the ones who like, hey, you're pretty good at breaking our things. Why don't we pay you so that we can up our security and fix this? It's great.
And that really ended development in SourceOP because the employment agreement that they signed, anything that he made for TF2 was Valve property from then on. So he had to really back away from running, because the other part of it was you go buy a Scrim server today, you just go to like whoever the hot ticket is right now and rent it. The boxes were in his house, and he was running the servers off of his own personal servers. So that was like a whole other thing. So there was a lot of custom stuff that could be done that way. But yeah, so that was like my early days of TF2. And then sort of the other things that I did were after I won UGC that season, there was a lot of janky. I guess if you want to, Ro, we can get into the like early jankiness of starting TF2. I think those are fun stories.
Oh yeah, take it away. Like that's, I have directions we can go after we're done with this tangent. But please, by all means, wacky stories are what we're here for.
Yeah, I see the chat. Very different, Tank Man. So UGC at the time had experienced incredible growth in Highlander, just like 500 teams, I think, maybe 540. I can't remember the numbers, but it was like a ridiculous number of teams, and they were super struggling to keep that together and running effectively. And so basically and it was a volunteer organization. So there was a giant emphasis on that. And the Sixes League was basically completely neglected. And the person running it was also doing work for the Highlander League. So it was of tertiary importance at best. And as a result, the map pool and rule set and like item bans had not been updated in years. And so there were maps that had been competitive mainstays years prior that were still being played. For example, I had a playoff match on, what is the name of the map
Fast
with
Lane?
the trains?
Oh, Freight.
No, CP Follower was in the map pool. I think it's Freight. Yeah. The trains run through mid. Yeah. I had a playoff match on that. So like Freight had been played. We had to come up with strats for Freight. You could use the water to super rocket jump.
Yep.
Like there was cool stuff, but not a great Sixes map. Fast Lane was the preseason map where I got stabbed in the back by Raise Fire as Spy and Drop Tuber on last. So Raise Fire who's now speed running and doing a lot of stuff on Twitch.
Big
I
streamer.
think still, yeah,
doing some cool stuff on stream. On
he Sunday Fun Day. As everybody who's played Comp TF2 knows, there's always like one or two teams you scrim constantly, and Sunday Fun Day was. We met early on, and they were that team we scrimmed all the time. And so I got to know Rays really well and the rest of the team. But he made me drop my first Uber in a comp setting, in a comp match, because it was my first ever match that wasn't Highlander. So that was like the jankiness of UGC. There were also other things going on, like teams that were constructed of basically invite players that thought they were going to roll everybody, and then they would randomly quit because the ESEA was too important. So you had like a team would wreck the bracket for the first 3 or 4 games and then quit. And then CEVO was actually far worse. So CEVO had a client to use, so whether it did anything or not, who knows. But the guy who was running it then ran it with him and another friend, and they were hardcore committed to making maps. And I can't even remember the name of the map that they created, but it ended with a B. Oh man, that's gonna bug me now. It's
if you describe the look of the map, I can remember it.
Well, it didn't have tiles yet. It was still the like hash mark being played in official matches. Yeah, so it was oh come on, it was capture the flag, and you had the flag was the briefcase is on a cart that goes to the center of the map and then backs itself off. But yeah, it was nuts.
That's the one thing I don't know about is the sixes scene when CTF was part of the rotation. Actually don't have any knowledge of those.
Okay, see, I'm pretty sure that it's Atrophy, and it was Atrophy B, like 7 or something.
Gotcha.
And yeah, and it was an absolute disaster because it didn't have textures yet. I Googled it and just found a version of it that does have textures. There was a funny little thing you could do on red side spawn area where you could get up in the ceiling and like clip through it. And so a lot of people would just grab the intel. Well, like once you got a sufficient number of points, you just get a scout on the intel and then hide him in the ceiling for the rest of the match. And this was considered fine. Also, you could rocket jump through certain textures. So if you practiced enough, you would figure it out. And after they made us play that, I was pretty well done with it. But we made the playoffs anyways. So I think we missed our last 2 matches. Like, we just didn't show. And we still made the playoffs because so many teams had quit. And then I received an email as to when our first playoff match was scheduled, and it was on December 24th. And I was just like, nah, we're not gonna play that match.
Right.
So so that was the end of it. CEVO also then they catastrophically failed. They didn't complete that. The finals of that season were played by the only teams that didn't forfeit. And so that ended that season. I don't remember who won. So then in the lead up to America versus Europe, they did a vanilla season, vanilla tournament. And so the pitch was, hey, that first LAN, all the American teams had to play vanilla, which was how Europe was playing at the time. And they ran a vanilla tournament. And everybody signed up, and it had an entry fee. We signed up. We had a team in it, and it was like cool. ComFT, which was very similar. I don't understand the dynamics of it, but I know Eckstein was heavily involved in ComFT. I don't know if it was like an extension of XTV or not. But anyways, they had run a bracketed tournament the summer before, and it was super fun, and I got to be destroyed by Banny and Tyrone as a little open BB player. We ended up meeting Quantic in, I think was what they were calling themselves at the time, in the second or third match of the tournament, and got absolutely crushed. So that was a great experience, and we signed up to do the vanilla tournament. But they kept having some kind of problem, and then they're like, well, we're delaying for more signups. We're delaying for more signups. Well, then as you kept delaying, it kept getting closer and closer to the start of the ESEA season, and then they were like, okay, well, we're going to actually just do a full vanilla season because we can't make this tournament work. And then everybody quit. I think only 4 matches were played, and I'm pretty sure Dummy and YZ's team and Try won because they played 3 games.
You're right.
On top of playing their ESEA matches. So that I had no faith in CEVO after that whole experience, and so having won UGC, I wrote a thank you for running the league, and then said, hey, we're in the open season and ESEA was already going, and I said, hey, I would like to update this summer. This is what you guys could do. Infinite, who was the head of the Highlander division, basically said, well, if you think you're so smart, you do it. And so I did. And the UGC, for the season and a half that I ran it, the Sixes League there was really, really big. And all we did was copy ESEA. Same rule set, same maps, same whatever. I put it in the rules for the league that we just matched whatever ESEA did and didn't give it a second thought. And then I got so that open season, we made it fairly deep into playoffs. And then ended up losing. I don't remember the particulars of that. And then we went to IM under, I think we got 14th or something all told. So we got through the first game. And then Sunday Funday went into I Am Under Us. So like they were a little buddy. And I got too busy trying to make an I Am team work because it was really hard to run the league anymore. And they had given me a sub admin named Loops, and Loops dropped N-bombs on stream and in the forum. And I was just like, why did you give me this guy? So I was done with it. And then they had to get rid of Loops because you did like that's not okay. And so I'm not. And then the guy that they had ticket over and I did like an exit interview basically, and they did a fine job. UGC Sixes was still really big for a long time. But I was glad. I always kind of took it as pride that I like helped it get more updated with the times and got that all pushed through. And then I played 5 or 6 more seasons. We ended up, Maine was my favorite season, where we ended up in Maine and we're a decent Maine team. And we lost 5-4 to Sal's Canal on Metalworks. And that was the end of us for our season that year in playoffs or season. We had talked about what we would do to go to invite, but we scrapped it. My only actual invite experience is thanks to CEVO. There was a team that was Marmaduke Grills and Rick _ and Snacks and CEVO, and they needed a med. And they tried me out. And I sucked in the tryouts because my house had flooded. Like there was water coming in the windows while I was playing.
The TF2 grind never stops.
Yeah. Well, what are you going to do, right? Like I can't stop it from coming in the windows. So I was like exhausted. And then they had me play with them like 5 or 6 more times. And it was still, like I was ripping apart my house every day and then going to play TF2. And my play was pretty subpar. So they ended up recruiting Stradivarius, if people remember Strat, to play med. So CEVO tells me, I'm going to fuck over Stradivarius every opportunity I get so they'll cut him. And then you can be an invite with me. And that's ultimately what happened for a little bit. And then the team died, and then they cut CEVO. Well, they cut CEVO, then the team died. So he was like, I tried too hard.
It was too obvious.
I tried too hard. It all went wrong. It was like,
they found the imposter among us, It's sabotage.
Yeah, well, and shout outs too, because on the main team, my pocket was BSC, and BSC, few people know, BSC is the reason that the hepatitis vaccine exists.
Yep.
So
just a casual doctorate playing TF2.
Yeah. So whenever I get the chance to tell that story, it's a great one for TF2 and people in it. Suffice to say, the short version of it is Basic was a graduate student who was studying the effects of various stimulants on octopi. And so if you look him up, a lot of his team names had octopus things. Basic's Octopus Emporium was an example. However, he went on vacation to visit family, and an intern took over taking care of his octopus, who was named Gary, of course, and they killed him. And so that wrecked his entire research project, and he had to go with his advisor, and like he was super depressed because essentially you've got to start grad school over again because all of his research was ruined. And then he took a random thing for the summer trying to grow livers out of stem cells, and it didn't work. Of course, otherwise we'd be living in a very different world. And he just went back to playing TF2 and living his normal life and doing new research on a new octopus. And then he got a phone call from Pfizer, and they were like, hey, could you fly to Miami and visit with us? And so basically that research that he had done was like instrumental in the creation of the hepatitis vaccine. And that was the last I really knew of Basic playing TF2.
Yeah, just a casual person hanging out, enjoying the fun of TF2 while also casually, the instrumental research for a vaccine.
Well, that was a shocking thing about the scene in general. I think that what wasn't really appreciated is, like, generally speaking, there were a lot of very brainy people playing TF2.
Yeah.
The number of like PhDs and executives that I met playing on pub servers was very high.
Oh yeah.
So then, after playing for a while, I had mulled around casting, and I had done casts before. There was this like wacky guy whose name I can't even remember. He had an open team, and he was friends with Zensity, and Zensity was an early, very successful. They were an open team that did remarkably well, and then they played in Invite. And he was friends with the Zensity guys, so that's the circle jerk system. And he had found out about the big Goldrush League and like stuff we were doing in our Highlander team, and basically advertised he could teach us to play sixes. Mainly, they just wanted a team to have a bigger dick then, so that they wouldn't feel so bad about themselves all the time. And he started his own little Proto Sixes League out of pub server players that he'd met. And I casted some of those games on his stream. And so that was like, I really enjoyed it. So I had gotten into looking at that. And I figured also if I was going to admin UGC, maybe casting some of those games would be of merit. I also avidly watched Seabear's casts, and that had gone back through the MGE casting era. I had also watched a lot of Salamancer at that time, and Eckstein, of course. And that was primarily how I approached competitive TF2 also, was we played a lot of pugs and stuff, but the way I was convinced, the way to figure out how to play TF2 was to watch demos. Your own demos, teams slightly better than you demos, and just I will probably watch 2 or 3 demos a day for months. And I would watch casts in addition, or I would play the STV and the cast together, so that because knowing what other people think is important is also good to know. Yeah. And so I approached it that way, and so I ultimately made a cast of one of my favorite games. I still have the demo on my PC of I think it's season 11 Granary match 10. So there we go, season 10 Granary match, and I cast that, and then Arcs, who was like the premier Eurocasters, was like, hey, this is really good, gave me some feedback on that. And as soon as I posted that video, I started getting requests to cast live on stream. And I think probably the season that I cast the last ESEA LAN. I cast a lot with Blank. I think Blank was my first co-caster. I also cast some with London Calling, who was another medic that was on Leche. And he had come up. We played them in CEVO. They were sort of like Sunday Fun Day to us. And then I got to cast with Seabear in the crew, which was really cool. I only got to do it once. I cast with Harblue a bunch of times. And then I think season 14.
14 sounds familiar.
Eckstein and Persona Non Grata and I cast like every game that was played that season, I feel like. I can't remember that clearly or not, but like Eckstein and I basically sat down and we're like, let's cast as much TF2 as we humanly can. And I think we cast just about every night. And maybe we did 60 casts or something that season. It was ridiculous.
Wild. Yeah. So many nights.
And then we didn't cast nearly as much ever again, really. But that was like, I feel like we thought that there was a good chance that if you just pushed a ton of content,
right,
it would work. And that sort of correlated with, I'd say, the high watermark for team count, because it's kind of gone down ever since season 16-ish, I think. At least that's the way I think of it. So yeah, there's me monologuing for a long time.
No, that was like you could literally like I tell this all the time that you were like the historian of all things TF2. Whenever it comes to like, if you want to know anything, right? Like, there's so many like things historically speaking, and I'm just like, my brain is like remembering like season 12 through like 16 and all that, just all of those experiences. Because I'm pretty sure the last season of ESEA was like 30. I want to say season 30 or 31 maybe.
Yeah, I don't clearly remember it. I honestly, that last ESEA cast, I started drinking at like 10 in the morning, and I don't clearly recall a whole lot of it. And then I just remember like trying to not be over emotional when we were done, because like ESEA was such a great thing to have, such a great community resource. And also, I kind of, it was kind of an acknowledgement that the dream of TF2 becoming a bigger esport was done.
Right. Yeah. Because a lot of the times, I remember this frequently too, in that era of like 2012 through like 2015, there was just everything revolved around ESC LAN. And I remember I-46 was big and I-52 was big. And then I-55 was big, but not I-49. I-49 was like weird. No one talks about I-49. But like those were like the big events for TF2, competitively speaking, that just always had a big crowd and a lot of attention, right? And so it's all these other like middling casts, things in like the middle of the season, any random this way or that way, right? Those don't get that much attention, right? Because it's just whatever. It's a crapshoot of how well the games are going to be. But when it's LAN, it's the top teams. When it's Insomnia, it's the teams that literally flew out of pocket just to show up the Europeans. And oh man, yeah, they're like and I remember, you might remember what's his name, Red something. Oh my goodness, why am I blanking? Red Eye, thank you. Right,
yeah.
He was a huge advocate too. This is like a huge esports commentator personality and all that, and he was like huge advocate for like TF2 and it exploding onto the whole spectrum of competitive esports, right? And it's just, yeah, I feel your sentiment for how like ESCA, like pumping out content is one thing, but it's like ultimately it's like we want to see high quality games, and those tend to be only the LANs.
Well, and the atmosphere that surrounds LAN, and it just like it purveys a certain mystique that I think is important to get people to make the jump if they're on the fence about getting into comp. Like it looks
LAN,
like that.
Everything is much more even on LAN. Like teams that are like whatever online, suddenly it's like a lot better, and their DM is a lot better. And these teams that are like out of nowhere just like show up and have the chops, right?
Right. Well, and a lot of it is just like people watching it go, "I want to do that."
Yeah, exactly.
And so you don't get that with an online only league, and like there were other things that were just, once you end up in a community league, things just get messed up because you're relying on the good faith of people and also their judgment, and that just like ESEA made bad calls, but the people who ran ESEA were in general ambivalent about TF2 and the people in the scene, which is important. Because they're not going to, like, that's the note pure, and his big gripe with the ESEA was they had that incident where Blaze tried to pay with an e-check, and they were like, no, your e-check is no good.
I remember that. Oh my goodness. I remember that season. Play. Holy crap.
And so they were like, no exceptions. because they felt like Blaze had a big relationship with the ESEA, and he'd been an invite for a million years, and he actually had his own personal sponsor at some point, and they didn't care because the guys who ran ESEA didn't know who Blaze was. And while, yeah, that's a sort of a downturn for us because we all wanted to see Blaze play, that's important in the people who run the league. The rules are the rules. We're not going to make special exceptions or judgments. And that you don't get that in a community-run league. And so you always have accusations of favoritism. Any kind of cheat or rules dispute is always very political. So that's the other problem that like you draw into, and I ran into that in UGC. It's also the time burden because those guys were making money, so they could like sit down and do it. But if you're a volunteer league, like I don't want to look through your 800th cheat dispute today, like, and I'm probably not gonna like unless it looks like the match was very important to the scene. So I ran into a bunch of stuff like that. UGC adminning stories, or I could give pretty plentiful too. But it just like that. So when I knew we were going to go to community and no one was going to sponsor us really for a bigger league, and the CEVO revival had been such a disaster.
Yeah, I played in that CEVO league. I got to play against Sean Bud, Lang, Dingo. And we went 4-5 on Snakewater. It was an overtime match. It was a really close match. I remember that relaunch of a CEVO, and I think that was the last season too, because it didn't really like stay long after that.
Yeah, and I played a couple of games as like a backup pocket for a person I had mentored in CEVO, so that was fun. At least I liked that they had Sizzlin integration, so good for that. But yeah, that. I continued to cast after that, and then I was still like whole hog TF2 doing stuff until circa 2016. And I started to back off because of different life and career changes. And then I was still pretty active through 2017, I think. And then I completely left in 2018. And I've been very intermittent ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of things happened over the course of your life, just personally, during those years following you leaving the TF2 scene. So,
yeah,
totally understood.
So I'm not really sure when the last season I really played was, because Basic had thought he got some time. And so Basic and I tried to do like a revival, but it didn't work out. And then Disposable Heroes had won Open, and I got in with them, and we played a season of IM together. And they had wanted to reform, maybe theoretically, but we just couldn't make that work either because our schedules never lined up.
Yeah, but that's the other thing too, is even though for you and in the past those opportunities couldn't quite flush out, right? The great thing about TF2 is it's still kicking. Like the scene still actually has like that kind of vibe where you can be like, you know what, I kind of want to dip my toe back in. You know, I'm not trying to. I know you've got more than enough going on that you can't do that, but like TF2, it's still purveying, right? Is that the word I'm looking for? It's surviving, and it's thriving. As I said in the Asia Fortress stream earlier today.
Yeah, I mean it's still alive. Oh yeah, so Jay here found my my league history. So 21 was my last ESEA season, but that was the Christopher Revival team. So Christopher and I, that main season, Christopher and I hooked up, and that was super fun. He and I jived really well together and have been friends ever since. I paid for the wrong Wowzers was the BSC Revivals because we had to have a backup, and his name was Wowzers on ESEA, and he didn't pay any attention, and there were like 5 other people named Wowzers, and he paid for the wrong guy. So some random CS player got paid up for ESEA Open.
Ain't that nice? Good.
Yeah,
That guy.
that's
I hope that
classic.
guy's doing well. Maybe he's kicking it in ESEA still in CS. That one random benevolent gift.
Yeah, I'm getting paid up for it. So like the last real season for me was 17, but then I had season 20. I played a lot of matches, and that I think is a redo of Christopher and Sinner. I don't really clearly remember that season. No, that's the main season. So yeah, so fun story about Sinner. The season before, Sinner had been in Open and was playing with Christopher, and the team's name was Sinner's Truck Problems, and I'm pretty sure that I cast matches with them on Badlands. And Sinner's Truck Problems was named that because he missed a match because his truck had problems. And so, as you can see, I think you'll post this one, right?
Yeah, the link is showing.
Yeah. So he got rid of his truck. He got a car, and the night of a scrim, it was on Metalworks. Sinner didn't show up, and that was really unusual. He wasn't the kind of guy that would just not come to scrim time, and we scrimmed 6 days a week. So basically we'd pug that one day, but we scrimmed 5 official. And then he comes into Mumble and he sounds lit, like super drunk, and he's like, guys, I got hit by a car. and we're like, dude, what? And he's like, I can still play though. And we're like, what happened? And he's like, oh, my arm's broken. And we're like, Sinner, no. So we just got like a ringer, and then I made the post, and then he posted the picture of his car. And so that season had a whole joke around it about cutting people, because every time Christopher and I discussed, like, if this person quit or we cut them, who would take their place, something awful happened to them. And so then we agreed we couldn't do it anymore. So we had a scout player that was a friend of Chris who did MMA, and he was doing something in an MMA match, and then like afterwards got like the crap beat out of him, and he couldn't play, and it was like there was a whole court thing. And then another guy got mistaken for someone else in a bar, and the police, like, they were sent in to get him, and he got beat up by the police, and then was in jail for several days, and had to, like, and he had a concussion and stuff, and then he sued the bar, sued the county, but missed a bunch of TF2 matches. So, like, that team had major issues. And then it was already a joke. We can't talk about cutting people. And then an old lady runs a red light and gets Sinner and breaks his arm. So that was how we got 3 different players in that season. We ended up getting Kermit, who, of all the people I've played with, I loved playing with Kermit. He was so much fun. Kermit, of course, famously was underage, and is the reason that Shade made it to Invite, because Kermit did not give any indication that his parents had not permitted him to go to LAN. And then everybody got to LAN, and Kermit wasn't there, and he was like, yeah, I'm like a child, and so I can't. And so they posted, could anyone in the Dallas area show up? And that was Shade, who mained demo at the time, which is what Kermit played, and that's how he got in.
Oh man, classic players, man. The scene. That's another question I wanted to ask you. Is like, what would you say is like a memorable meta in TF2? And I know you're gonna say pre-crossbow.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, and honestly,
aside from pre-crossbow, because I know that's your preference.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think the best TF2 was when the crossbow did heal people, but it took a literal eternity to reload.
Yeah, that's right. Before it was the free reload, right?
Right. And I don't think it built Uber either. And
Yeah, that's true as well.
I think that's the most interesting meta, because
you get one arrow once, basically.
You get one arrow once, and the whole time you're dicking around with your crossbow out, you're not charging. So there's like a real trade-off there. But you provide massive healing to a teammate who's strategically placed. Like, that's neat. I did not run crossbow often, but I found crossbow to be very useful on Cold Front and G-Pit, because on G-Pit, the way I played it, you always had a roamer
on the roof.
On the roof. And so, really, it was usually the pocket on the roof. But anyways, so that guy's up there, and it's easier to crossbow him than to have him walk back. And so that worked really well. Cold Front had a lot of elevation and stuff in it, so that made it really useful there too. Fast Lane, it was really good on. And so I liked that. But then Scout Speed buff and crossbows, a nah for me.
Yeah.
And
completely
at least
transformed.
Yeah, at least for interesting gameplay. Another incident was the quick fix fiasco.
Oh, yes.
And in Maine, so that season of Maine, we created the quick fix mafia, which was we had an agreement with everybody in Maine was really tight. We'd all come up through the scene together, and it had gone on and on and on.
Yeah, let me give some quick context of the quick fix for those who are unaware.
15, yep.
So before what you might know the quick fix is now, the quick fix previously didn't overheal, and I don't remember exactly how the like flying mechanics worked. I think it was more or less the same, but like the quick fix was, there was no overheal, and it was fast charge for the Uber, and it sucked. And they reworked it. That was like a huge year where they reworked like a million different things, and like all the weapons got changed, and the quick fix got buffed to overheal by half. And it basically, the form that you see it in today, was what it was. And so that was the update to the quick fix, and that introduced this meta that Marxist is now talking about.
Right. So and there was an ESEA rule that was essentially in effect that if a weapon were significantly changed in season, it would be banned. And so that was abrogated because the top invite teams got together with the admins, and they essentially voted in violation of the rules that we should all have to play with quick fix. And really, the true controversy of it was that Classic Mix-Up essentially went with it because they had the feeling they couldn't beat Vanny, and so they thought, well, we'll just throw a wrench in the whole system and get everyone on board with this, and maybe that'll give us an edge that we need. And in effect, it ruined Invite TF2, but Maine was kept pure because we had all come up together and we're all friends with each other for the most part. I mean, maybe even if you hated each other, you had friendly rivalries. And so John Milter and I started it. I messaged John Milter and I said, how about we just agree not to use the quick fix? And he was like, thank God, let's not do it. So then we started messaging other teams. Lucrative was the next player I contacted, and I was like, hey, Luke, let's not run the quick fix. He was another medic player, and he was like, hell yeah. So then we created this mafia system that was like five to six main teams, and then we all agreed that if anybody used the quick fix in a match, they would not be scrimmed again. And so if you wanted to practice against the other main teams, you could not run the quick fix. And there was only one team that was not a party to this agreement, and it was Mangachu's team. And the reason for that is that Mangachu's team didn't really scrim main teams. Good advice on Mangachu. Mangachu's team primarily scrimmed against low-level invite teams. And there was kind of a debate within the main scene as to whether that's what you ought to do or not. Main was the hardest I ever tried in TF2 because all the teams knew each other so well and were so evenly matched. But But then Mangachu's team was losing and tried to bring out the quick fix in a match against John Milter, and everybody's furiously typing in, like, what are you doing? That's not allowed. And they're like, what? And they're like, nobody told us. So then they stopped using it. In a tip of the hat to them, they did not use it. And I remember a bunch of main playoff matches got casted by Sean Budd and some other people, and they had this discussion of like, what's going on? Why aren't they using the quick fix? And then Sean Budd was like, yeah, Maine has like some kind of gentleman's agreement not to use it. And the main playoff matches were some of the best TF2 ever played. Unfortunately, all of the invite LAN TF2 that was played sucked and did permanent lasting damage to the scene.
For context, and what did it suck? Was it just that it was one team was winning and rolling?
No, it was like impossible to.
Oh, that was the same quick fix. What am I saying? That was the quick fix meta. Yeah, no, I remember the most. I think the most iconic match of that ESEA invite was, I think it was Mix Up versus Banny's team. I think were they VP at the time? They were HRG at the time, right? So it was HRG versus Invite, or versus the Mix Up Revive team, and it was a 30-minute match on Goalie Wash, and it was a slog. And the thing that broke the parity of like last to last to last and not breaking through, not doing anything, was a Conqueror from Platinum or Hard Blue. One of the soldiers on Plat's team just had the Conqueror, and they used the Conqueror to pull in a last ditch push on that moment, and that's how they won the round. After what was it was more than 30 minutes too. It might have gone to overtime. It was just the longest match of TF2, 0-1 final score. Just. Yeah, no, I remember now, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was dreadful. And then, so Anonymous and Try and those guys had gone to LAN. And I think that they were HRG that season, if I can remember. And Kermit and I were watching together. And Kermit was like, Try's asking me what to do, because they were on process. And I was like, run crits. Like, that's the only, like, you're either going to lose because the quick fix is just better than crits, or you're gonna wipe them out and win the match. And I was pretty confident that Try and those guys could use it. And they rolled the first two rounds, bringing crits to mid on process, and then they just got crushed. Like the Banny and the crew adjusted to the idea that they would be vaporized if they stood too close together, and right. So it didn't work. That was me and Kermit working together to try to coach another team on how to break the disgusting situation of quick fix, but it wasn't doable. And then at the end of that season, it was banned.
Yeah, there was almost a rock paper scissors kind of situation with the Mediguns at that time, but quick fix was just too strong. It was incredible.
Well, yeah, the whole meta prior to crossbow charging and scout speed was and demo nerf. Demo nerf made that was way so huge.
When they reverted the nerf, it was so it was not full revert, but when they reverted it, it was before. Oh my goodness, it was miserable. I remember that so much. Demos just became like awful. The damage was pitiful. Oh my goodness, I remember that.
Yeah, I also like watching StarCraft, and there have been numerous discussions that the original Brood War should be altered, because there's like things that everybody knows are bugs, but they never have. And I wish TF2 had followed that model instead, because they're like, in an attempt to make things better on certain maps, and in an attempt to make things have more fans, there were just really rough things that were done, and changed a lot of the calculus that has made comp less interesting.
Sorry,
at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, memory lane of former TF2 metas. Yeah, well, that was, man, I remember that year, the quick fix. Every single item, man, Conqueror, buff banner, battalions, so many things got changed, and it like wrecked so much. And now things are more, I would say, more or less stabilized. We're in a good place. A lot of the leagues, as I understand it, are in communication with like a similar format in terms of how it's played and the items that are allowed. Quick Fix is still banned to this day, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and as far as like other meta breaking things was gunboats. When they legalized gunboats, that really changed the way that you had to play with your soldiers, because there was like this whole sub meta of rotating soldiers and all this other stuff that went out the window, because ultimately Nihai's Flow in season 11 figured out that you could just heal a scout and send both soldiers around on gunboats.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and that like and that's essentially how we play still, is two soldiers with gunboats all are the vast majority of the time, and a scout being healed. And then we decided to make that situation worse by adding the scout speed buff, so what do I know.
Right. Yeah, the it's incredible to think how different the game would be if Demo won that update. It was a community poll, right? Like people
Yeah, it was
versus Soldier.
Yeah, it was.
Imagine if Demo got gunboats instead of Soldier. Just like how incredibly different the game would be.
Yeah, well, because it would be virtually useless on Demo, man.
Exactly. And then Soldier would have like nothing to show for it. People would have to be as good as what's his face. Wow, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah, person in chat says, had not legalized gunboats. No, they didn't legalize gunboats until after the I-Series with America, because they had tried to add unlocks into TF2 in Europe, and the Prem teams rebelled and said they wouldn't play with them. So they did the main mafia over the entire league in an entire continent, and it worked until they got crushed at playing vanilla TF2 by American teams.
Sorry, just getting some links up here real quick. Just trying to get a chat open. Ugh. So yeah, a lot of history of TF2 over the many years that this game's been around. You kind of covered a lot of my my basic outline for our history of TF2 in terms of your involvement and the very grassroots beginnings, where there was basically there was some structure to it, but like it was kind of finding its legs. And then Sixes growing and growing and growing, ESEA being the premier league that most people flocked to, and that was the big thing. Was like becoming an ESEA invite player, right? This is what I remember in terms of like the history of TF2. Really, really great talking with you about that general era, if you want to call it that. I'm trying to think of like what other direction take from here, because that covered a lot of pretty much everything. Marxist guides.
Okay,
back when Marxist was a coach, a teacher, a teacher of men.
Well, I am experimenting. Yesterday, I experimented with OBS, and I'm not gonna probably do a lot of TF2 content, but I still play video games, so I may as well like put stuff out there. So look out, self plug. You can watch me be crappy at stuff. Yeah. So what happened with that was we won UGC, and I then became the league admin, and a large number of UGC teams started asking me for advice because they saw that we had won UGC the season before.
You have a wealth of knowledge.
And and so I did the first match of the season that year, or season, I guess, was Viaduct, which is my favorite map, and other than GPIT. And
I love GPIT too.
Yeah, anyway. The GPIT week was the best week. But anyways, so they were like, help us play Viaduct. We don't get it. So I walked this team through for like 2 hours on what to do on Viaduct. And then another guy messaged me and they were like, can't help but see you're in a Viaduct server with this team that is in our league. Would you help us too? And I was like, this is not viable. I have to just do this once and record it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I started doing. And then demo reviews were really popular on streams, but my internet was... I actually worked with Twitch John and Giggly, because Giggly's stream was abysmal in quality. And so Twitch John and Giggly tried to help me get set up to run a stream. And the only way that I could go live with video was stills. I could show stills on Twitch, but if anything moved, it was just pixel... like large block quick pixels. So I thought about doing Marx's PowerPoints, but it just wasn't worth it. So I could upload YouTube videos, which would be primarily still images for size, because like uploading one guide would be like a 28-hour upload. And so if I had a day where I knew I didn't need to use the PC much, I could do that upload. So my normal routine was we would finish scrimming on Friday. I would upload a guide video, and then I would leave the house for the weekend, and I would have a video uploaded or not. And then people started asking to do demo reviews, so I did those too. And that was what sort of created the Marxist Guide series. And then there was a strong effort on the part of Kevin to revive newbie mixes, which had been done a lot earlier. Newbie mixes had been going on before I even started. I never actually played in a newbie mix. But so then they liked the videos as a general guide, and so they really started pushing them. And that's why I think that's why they got the views that they did. People are still watching them, so that's cool. They're like 8 years old now. My guide videos are halfway to getting a driver's license. But that's what built that. And also like the 10 Ubers videos and those kinds of, or like Medic at Mid, that was like not only like me trying to display or like teach different lessons, but like that's how I learned TF2. So like that was also trying to, I didn't like implicitly say that in the video, but it was like, I'm trying to teach you not like, ooh, this, if this do that, like vhalin's flowchart of TF2, but how to think. Yeah, I've still got copies of it on my PC.
It's so funny. Is Met alive? Bomb in. Not alive. Yeah. Get healed.
Yeah. Well, you start at, is it possible to cap last? Yes. Win round. No. Is your medic down? So like that's the flow chart.
Yeah. I remember those.
My favorite part. Where is it? Yeah. Yeah. Is the other teams? Yes. Inappropriate language. Do you want to lose? Yes. Try to get a kill. So yeah. Man. So like, how to think was important to me too.
Right.
So. Yeah. Well, yeah, and that like that ran the gamut there. I was really happy with how those turned out. I initially tried to include music in some of them.
You managed to avoid the DMCA wave,
right?
In the process.
And I think I made ad revenue off of it. As I recall, I think those videos made me like $14 to $20.
Huge.
Yeah, so like that was nice. Well, and I did have a PayPal link for a while, and I think Jaguar gave me some props on there, and a couple other people did too. Jaguar and I's relationship was always really fun because Jag's team, Jaguar Fiends teams, and them and Disposable Heroes were like constantly at each other. And then after I got out of that ecosystem, I was sort of equivalent to Jag, or we always had to play each other. So, and he and I still talk every now and again. Yeah.
Yeah, he also runs the Pastime Community, which is basically the soccer version, but TF2.
Yeah, the Valve's attempt at a new game mode that it's fun, but it definitely felt like a lead balloon for the competitive scene, I should say, at least.
Tragic.
As far as the wide-reaching, right, in terms of a wider audience, but it's still, yeah, him running it and all that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Well, and yeah, for other modes, Eckstein had that, you die once, like CS style, where once you die one time, you're dead.
Oh, right. What isn't that? There was a Koth version of that where if you capped, you brought back your whole team.
Yeah, there was experimenting
Arena.
with that.
I think it was some kind of arena.
Yeah, Arena, the Arena League.
Yeah.
There was Arena League. There was 4v4, 3v3. There was a lot of when Ulti-Duo first came out. There was a lot of Ulti-Duo.
Yeah, Ulti-Duo was really popular because it's just so simple. You just get two people, you and your bud.
Yeah, and B-Ball. That
I love B-Ball too. Yeah.
The frag video that is Wonderwall and
Wonderwall is
playing B-Ball is so good.
It really is. Just dunking on all of them. TF2 is great. Like the developers at Valve knew what they were doing with TF2 on so many fronts, and it shows with how much it survived. TF2 is a community-run game. Like they gave everyone the tools to create these like really weird and interesting game modes, and that's what got us Ulti-Duo, B-Ball. B-Ball's really fun. And just all these other ways to play, starting from just like a baseline game. They like gave us the tools, and the community took it in stride and made the game the multitude of things that can be played that it is today.
Well, and a lot of that was born. A lot of those game modes were born out of MGE, which was an attempt to monetize knowledge, really, and training modes. Because when I started, my gaming edge was still up, and so you had to pay a membership fee. And then that would get you access to all of the Fragiles videos. So like there's an archive of them on YouTube because they made them free afterwards. And I modeled a lot of my videos on what the Fragile had done there. So you paid the membership fee that pulled up videos on every map, videos on different situations. You could buy mentoring time with top tier players. And then they had the MGE mod, and that was like all the training modes that we all know today, really. And then also Ulti-Duo, and then they had the My Gaming Edge casts, which were excellent. That were usually Bloodsire and Seabear and a medic player whose name I can't remember. No.
Oh, darn.
DJC was a great caster, but DJC played Soldier. Man, he had really long curly hair. I can't remember his name right now, but he was sort of the Seabear and Bloodsire did color commentary, and then they'd be like, "Golly gee, why did that happen?" And then he would talk for a couple seconds, and then they would go back to doing what they were doing. But that was the core of what you got from My Gaming Edge. And I think Lang himself did a lot of the programming for it.
Yeah, he was a big programmer for the MG mod that we know today. I forget who took on the reins shortly after, or not shortly after, but who took on the reins currently. I'm trying to remember their name. But someone else took over and has been keeping it up to snuff for what it is now. The MG mod itself. Yeah, that is probably also one of the tenets of TF2 competitive, just like the accessibility, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Being able to have these tools available to keep getting better at TF2, right? These things that we take for granted these days that are just like, this is part of the game. You have access to DM servers where just auto DMs you, SourceOP DM, right?
Yeah, well, and DM servers got really big after YZ50 kind of appeared, because YZ50 famously said, although this isn't strictly true because he was a Quake dealer, said that the way he got so good was that he just sat down and DM modded like 9 to 10 hours a day for an entire summer. And then literally everyone had to try and DM mod as much as humanly possible after he said that. And I'm pretty sure it was a joke, but that caused DM servers to become quite popular.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Lental Rico. Yeah, there he is, CB. So, yeah, it's weird. I remember some people pretty well, and I don't remember others. So what can you do?
Yeah, some names just kind of escape you. Just like the I'm trying to remember, there's a config, some really wacky demo config. Just the weirdest button configuration you could imagine. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway.
Yes, Solids.
Don't remember.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, Solid Snake was a full-time Targe demo for a long time. Like, that was pretty well known. There were two guys named Thief and Fighter who played on different ESEA teams. And, well, another thing that's kind of fun is there have always been players that try to make non-standard meta classes work. So, like, Thief tried to use Scottish Res and some weird scout weapons exclusively and make those viable. Fighter played full-time Heavy. And I think he affected an entire generation of us, because Disposable Heroes and my other teams became pretty well known for running heavy in non-standard situations. And the slogan on Disposable Heroes was, if we start to lose, Dumbrain goes heavy. And it worked so well. Like, the number of times that teams would try to sack in to, say, Badlands mid, and there's a heavy standing on the box. Like, you're literally never going to break this. Have a nice day. Or one of my favorite playoff moments was, oh man, what was his name? He was a good medic, and he played with Mangachu, and they were Ubering. They were going to bring their Uber out of last on Badlands, and Dumbrain was still heavy from when we were going to push last with a heavy, and it got botched. So he just hid under drop down on Badlands, and the medic got skyboxed because he dropped out of the drop down, and the heavy was just there, and air suspended him, and he popped Uber and just was still stuck in the air being suspended by the heavy, which didn't die and ultimately killed their medic. And it was just like, yes, the heavy is so good.
It sounds like Wireless Fox, if we're thinking.
No, it wasn't Wireless Fox.
Okay.
Yeah. Though somebody knows Thief. Yeah, Force of Nature. Thief constantly used that thing, and he would just, like, show up. But Scotch Res was his other big thing. And so, like, that, playing against Fighter and him all the time caused us to do weird stuff. And so heavy coming out of forward spawn on Snakewater was very common. Heavy dropping out of the window on Snakewater was very common. Heavy standing in the middle on Gully Wash or on Spire on Gully Wash. It's like they were everywhere. Another thing I tried to do that really upset people was make offensive engineer a thing. Because I think nothing is more frustrating when a team Ubers into your last and then an NG carries a gun in, because now there's a higher priority target than the players that just came into your last, because if that sentry builds itself to level 2, you've probably lost. You don't go to level 3 because it takes too long. But if you just do that level 2 gun, you walk it in there, plan it, that's was my dream, to make that a thing, but it always upset people too much.
Too soft. Too not ready.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there were other things you could do. Like on G-Pit, we would always run our pocket on direct hit because everybody's defense revolved around that sentry gun, and he would just peek it until the engineer wasn't standing there literally banging on it and just kill the gun.
Yep.
And then if he got, if somebody jumped at him, they would get rocked. And that was the best part.
Oh man, the formative years of TF2 strategy is just so precious because we have a lot of tools available to us in terms of strategy, weapons. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do when the map and the strategy come together, like it does on Gravel Pit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and running it where you hold both points at once, the Iron Man strat. That was all we ever did. We after Pure streamed a video of him trying to figure out how to make it work, and that's all I ever did from there on. And sometimes it didn't work out, but it was still way more fun than standing there banging on a sentry the whole time.
Right. Yeah, Pure streams were great.
Oh yeah, I was an avid watcher, and we would watch. Everybody watched the Tyrone and Pure and other streams like that. Sigma, I think, was the name of that medic. It just came to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody watched. And like I would say, Pure's stream was fun and good, but Tyrone's stream was legitimate,
hilarious,
wonderful viewing. Like he was so good at that.
He understood.
And I'm not throwing shade on Tyrone, but like I had never gotten along well with Tyrone. And also I was in the wrong circle jerk. But I had literally never heard a good word said about Tyrone ever. And so it was interesting to see him in that light and just how much fun it was to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was also fun I remember specifically explicitly, I remember at the I-46 pre-stream, there was just like all these meme images of Clockwork and Tyrone, because Tyrone played tennis. And so there were all these like hilarious edits of Tyrone with a flag that they were like just popping up on the stream just to like kill time. And it was so fun. Tyrone's a bright young man during the time.
Yeah, now we're all old, but
yeah, everyone's old now.
Yeah, and it I don't know, like that 2012 era was so exciting, and it was great to be a part of. It was really, really good. Trying to think of other, well, yeah, and you could see it all the time. Steve C had a really good stream. There was a guy who would come in randomly and sing to Steve C, which also really made the night.
Oh my gosh, I remember that. Yeah.
Seagull streams were really good, but
Seagull streams were awesome. Going. And he's even crazy successful for being such a even more of a wonderful personality. Just he's the guy. I remember this is the one thing I remember people talking about in regards to Seagull when it came to like meeting him in person, is he's just like the best hugger ever. And like people loved that he was just that approachable. He was such a big teddy bear of a guy. Super, super friendly and awesome. And it shows on his streams too. Very, very cool guy.
Yeah, Seagull was great. I only got to talk to him a few times because we ran in different circles. And then he left TF2 like not shortly thereafter, like season 13 or so. He came back later, but he was out of it when I was at my like most intense.
Yeah. And then there was a time where Banny used to stream with his horrific resolution, no cam, and when he did, he got numbers, before he also became a full-time streamer.
Yeah, well,
YouTube maker.
Yeah, Banny has always been an incredible player. I have pugged with Banny numerous times. It was always a lot of fun. I was always in the wrong circle jerk, so Banny was basically the great Satan, and so you like that. So that was just what it was, and Banny's still here, and all my circle jerks are dead. So who won in the end? But yeah, so that I just ended up in a different crowd. But yeah, his streams are really good. His gameplay has always been really good. I enjoyed the season of Banny on Soldier for while it lasted. That was a lot of fun.
This dude C-taps with every single jump. It's ridiculous. Just an incredible jumper. And it's funny too. The one thing that I can like pride myself in over Banny in terms of his raw talent and skill is I'm better at wall climbing than he is. He just like his brain does not understand how to do Soldier and just do these little like simple wall climbs. He like has to like bust out the original because he just struggles so hard with it. It's really funny to me. And meanwhile, he can literally like every time he jumps, it's the max height, max distance, perfect every time.
Yeah. Well, on Truck Stream, I mean, there's a throw out to somebody who wasn't like great at TF2, but who provided
just
great
a
content.
great asset to the TF2 community with his camera work primarily, was what he's known for. Really good at surfing too, and also good streaming personality.
He now works at Riot for Valorant esports production.
Oh, that's sick. Very sick. Working for Riot now.
Yeah,
that department. Very cool. Yeah, he's got the experience for sure and the talent.
Yeah, I always really liked working with Kurt. What are some other? Well, we almost did a cast with Tay Zonde. That would have been really fun, goodness. But we never got all the scheduling to line up because Tay Zonde is a fan.
Mm-hmm. I remember there was like a legendary stream of Tay Zonde, like one of the first streams he did, and he was going to play TF2, and he messed up and had the window in the capture screen, so it was echo. It was like doing the infinite loop thing where it like captures him and his voice and everything he was doing. It just like progressively starts harmonizing with himself in this infinite like feedback loop of himself speaking. Tay Zonde. That would have been an epic cast if that ever came about.
Yeah, that was. I can't remember who solicited me, and they were like, "Do you want to cast with Tay Zonde?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I do." But yeah, Kurt was a good production guy. There was another guy before Kurt who was so good, and I would like to shout them out, but I can't. No, Massad's after.
Okay.
Man, and he was a really good Soldier player. Like I think that's what made, because he did a lot of the early lands too. Like he came off of the MGE team, and he was a super good roamer. And so like something in the messed up brain of a roamer player made a beautiful cameraman. Because he just had that like feel where something big was going to happen and was always there.
You're not thinking of Lang, are you?
No.
Okay.
No, not Lang either. Man, but they never made. I don't think he made Invite. I think he was just like a perennial IM player that was really good. I mean, there were all these other legendary players. Like there was a open player named Tiger who was absolutely crushing at Soldier, but he worked on Wall Street or something, and so he didn't have time. And so they never scrimmed. He would just show up and crush people and go home. And if you played Tiger's team, Duwatna was a lot like that for a while until Duwatna got moved up. Duwatna's teams were always just Duwatna and 5 people doing whatever it took to get Duwatna to be in the position to win.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably one of my favorite TF2 memories. I'll wax nostalgic one last time. We're playing Duwatna's team and Sesco was on that team. Sesco became one of my best TF2 friends. Sesco was on that team, so they had a legit scout threat in addition to Duwatna. But they decided what we'll do is turtle around Duwatna and run a sniper full time. And that because if you try to jump at Duwatna, you're going to get killed or shot at least by the sniper, and it's a big threat. And we kind of traded back and forth, but we were clearly losing. And and we go into halftime down like 3-1, I think. And I was like, we know Viaduct, we're better than this. And my team overruled me, and they were like, we're just going to run Hugh on sniper. Like Hugh Laurie was a well-known sniper in Highlander and had been a sniper on our Goldrush server. So we bring Hugh in and put him on full-time sniper, and he went 67-4 or something like that. And we won the match. And it killed that team.
I mean, there's nothing more demoralizing, frankly.
Yeah, Hugh Laurie literally headshot their whole
1v6.
careers. Yeah, 1v6. And then we constantly kept shit talking them too, of like, never run a sniper again. Like, you've awoken Hugh.
Oh, that's so good.
But yeah, so that was probably one of my finer TF2 moments. Another really just beautiful memory was on Freight. IR Robot, who had been trained by one of the higher level teams, was our roamer, and he went spy on last and got discovered and killed. And Freight, actually, for all Freight's mess, pushing off of last to 2 was actually pretty easy to do. It was risky, but it wasn't the hardest thing in the world to accomplish. And so we get pushed all the way back to our own last and push them all the way back to their last. And this is also overtime, by the way. It's the golden cap. And Robot, I hear his sweet little voice. He was 17, and he goes, I'm going to go spy again. And I'm like, okay. And they find him and kill him. They try to push out to 2, and we block them, but we don't get their meds, so it's even again. And IR Robot says they'll never expect me to go spy a third time. And he backstabs the med and their heavy both. It's now 4v6 with no Uber, and we win the match.
Beautiful.
So he was right.
They'll never expect I'm not demoralized. I'm persistent. Just kept at it.
We erupted in Mumble. That was such a great moment. Yeah, it was so good.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that was a great. It was on Freight in UGC. I don't remember the team we played. I also got in pretty well with Mason and that crew, Grape and Mason and them. And they had a scout player that was remarkably good as well, who I can't remember his name, but he was really big.
Arctic Joe? Or Babe?
No, not Bape or Arctic Joe.
Soldier,
older.
right.
His Meb was his name. And Meb played he played this game a lot, and I've got to go through my Steam list to find it because I bought it because he told me to. Grim Fandango. He constantly played Grim Fandango or like talked about it, and I bought it because of him and still haven't gotten around to it. So if Meb ever sees this, I'm sorry, I'll get to it.
Gotcha. Well, we're kind of winding down. You can talk forever. I know that. Right. We're winding down here, and you do have to go. I think one thing we can kind of close this on is, what would you say is like just a catch-all good advice for people who want to pursue competitive TF2 in any facet, whether that's casting or playing or anything? What is like the bottom line, in your opinion, of how to get better at TF2 and get more involved in TF2?
Don't take yourself too seriously. If you get really into trying to be the best, it will blind you to what's important, and which is building good relationships with your teammates and in cases co-workers. If you're in the casting scene, like, building the relationship is the important thing, and destroying it by being a dick because you lost is not the right thing to do.
Shout out to TLR and the trophy.
And that will be a problem. And in a competitive environment, that's a impetus that I found hard to resist.
Mm-hmm.
And then just do it. if you want to make content, just go ahead and do it, and somebody will watch it. It's the old Seinfeld episode when George Costanza pitches his show, and they're like, "Why would anyone watch this?" And he goes, "Because it's on TV." Like, just go ahead and do it. If you want to stream or make YouTube videos or cast, like, just do them on your own, and the rest of the other people doing it will find out.
Wonderful. That was a beautiful summation, right? A little bit of everything going on there. With that was a lot of what you did. You know, you wanted to help educate the people because they asked you, and then you moved on to like, I got to just do long form videos, give them one and done. And it's like you said, still 8 years later, still used for newbie mixes and all that. It's all about putting yourself out there and giving it your best. And again, I agree with don't take yourself too seriously, because Bandy's the best and no one's going to top that.
Yeah. Oh man, they're playing the video. Yeah, what a shameful display. Everybody was like 12 then, so what can you do?
Oh man, my brain is slipping. What was the really good sniper that played on Banny's team? And he played scout. Started with a C.
Clockwork.
It wasn't Sizer. It was
Clockwork. It's the only one I can think of.
Justin played sniper a ton, but was never on Banny teams. Paua was on teams for a little bit. Was the Brazilian masterpiece?
Yeah, Paua's awesome.
Bloodsire was on there for a while.
I thought you were going to say Hero.
And he founded AA.
He had a 6 spy play, and it was a highlight on Stream Highlights.
You're not thinking of Mackie, are you?
No. It definitely starts with
Mackie also played a lot of sniper.
He was predominantly scout. I'm saying sniper because he was a really good sniper in Highlander, and he was like the strongest sniper in Highlander for the time. Oh my goodness, how is this like? It's killing me because I need to know this. Oh my goodness, I'm only bringing this up because of like the old days of TF2 where if you wanted to pug, you did it through the IRC. You didn't have the way things are now, where either it's just a mumble call or having in groups, or I think there's a couple sites like I think Faceit has something like that. RGL might have that implemented.
Well, here, I'll share a fun story.
I have to.
This will be the last one, right?
Go for it.
So because of the IRC pug chats, people weren't masking their IPs, and so nefarious types started to DDoS people using their IPs that they had found. And I was supposed to cast a match. I think it was Open Finals with Blank, and they were DDoSing this medic player, Crespi. And so it like completely busted the game and server, and Crespi just kept getting DDoSed. And so Blank just left because they also started DDoSing Blank. And then Blank just like left me and couldn't come back because his internet was broken. And then he finally came back right at the end of the cast, drunk, and we wrapped that one out. And that was the DDoS Open season, because I think it was Open Finals. Yeah, Corsa. That might be that's a name.
It's not Corsa. Oh, no, maybe it was Corsa. Hold on. It's coming back to me.
Did he have the spy play on Metalworks where he got...
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of, Corsa.
That's a beautiful play.
That is probably one of the best, one of the top 5. If I had to put a what's the word I'm looking for here? A definitive list of the top 5 plays in TF2. That one's in the top 3. It's hard to beat the context of Harblue on Insomnia last. Like the context of that one gives it like a lot more points. It's kind of like a whatever play. Like it's very simple, but like with the high stakes and what it meant, like the context is what makes that play like greater. But Corsa doing that backstab is just so sick. Get a kill, get the big earner speed boost, and then surf a rocket into the next player and backstab them.
Yeah,
I was bringing this up because I remember when Corsa was like 13 years old playing TF2 Pug and AHL, and I would be playing Pugs with Corsa on Pug and AHL on the IRC. Anyway. Yeah, Corsa. That was it. Thank you. Sorry. got distracted.
Yeah.
I'm a part of a lot of this TF2 like memory lane kind of thing where I was an observer for most of it. I was a consumer of the content, not necessarily involved in the scene. Because my first cast was 2014 with Nick the Fragile Leon.
Yeah, and casting with Nick was always a lot of fun too. And Nick's a great guy. I also, people weren't as aware of how far Nick had gone in competitive Street Fighter either.
Oh yeah. Wonder if he's participating in Street Fighter 6 these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I see a lot of my friends list playing it, so who knows? But my days of competitive gaming are well gone.
Someone wanted to see if you guys had anything to comment on in regards to EVL TV. I just got that from in my DMs right now. So, any comments on that?
I don't remember the only weird experience I've had casting was there was this casting org that appeared for like a day that paid me $45 to cast one game and then never did anything ever again, and that was awesome. I loved that guy.
I'll take that again. Yeah, pay me. Now, the only experience of TF2 that really, or EVL that stands out to me was just the whole kibosh with Sigafu and the grand finals where like he really wanted to cast the grand finals and someone else had to step in, or he got pushed out for some reason. It was just like, that was like the only thing that was really weird organization by that. I don't really have much to say in the way of EVL TV.
I never had much interaction with them as far. I think I cast EVL TF games, but
yeah, for me it was. I remember I casted my one game. It was the IM Grand Finals with the Fragile, and then they were like, "Yeah, we're going to ship you over to EVL. They're taking casters," and I was like, "Okay, sure." And I casted EVL for like 1 or 2 years, and then Overwatch came out, and I remember there was one member of EVL who was like internal, not one of the casters or producers that I played a lot of Overwatch with. That was fun. And that was like it. That was my exposure to EVL. The most I got out of EVL. EVL was a cool friend.
It looks like, yeah, I did some casts for EVL. But Truck, it looks like Intino's on cam on these. In season 23, but yeah, I didn't never had bad interactions with them.
Yeah, it was just a normal. Like it was what it is. It was just casting. They were doing their thing. I remember the Slack. That's about it.
Oh yeah, Slack. Yeah, the EVL Slack that Mr. Slin kept trying to work out, and everybody got so mad at me because I refused to use it. And I was like, if you want me to cast, literally just send me a Steam message and I'll be there. But I am not using this app because I was still using a flip phone. And so like I had to like log into Slack on my PC and like check it and stuff. I was like, nah, you all have me on Steam. What's your problem? And so, yeah. And then I didn't cast for like an entire season because Mr. Slin kept doing it. And whoever took it over didn't know that I wasn't in the Slack because I didn't want to cast. It's just because I took a stand to not use it. And yeah, so there we were. And then they were like, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what EVL should be known for, is the Slack.
Yeah, the EVL Slack that I refused to use. Yes, so I didn't cast one entire season, not because I didn't want to, but because whoever was running it didn't know that I was protesting the existence of the Slack.
It's just very inferior as a program. It's kind of like what Discord is now, but Discord is a lot more streamlined in a lot of different ways. But yeah, that was Slack.
Yeah, I remember Slin tried to be like, hey, this is like a lot of work, and I got to do all this stuff. And I was like, I don't see how it's any more work for you to just be like, hey, Marxist, cast on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like that was simpler somehow.
Right. Anyway. Marxist, it's been a lovely 2 hours. We've been shooting the shit, as we say. And I know you could go on for more and more hours. If you even like, I could just imagine you, if you want, just like turn on the camera and just start spitballing about any TF2 era or any stories you want, and you could fill an auditorium with people who would listen.
Well, I mean, the Marxist stream might come to be. I have the account set up to do it from back when we.
And now you have internet.
We tried, yeah, and I have real internet that's like broadcasting this, and it looks okay. So.
Mm-hmm. So we'll just leave that as kind of like a nice little teaser for those who are who've watched and enjoyed your a little trip down memory lane for you and your TF2 career, and they'll have something to look forward to if you ever get that one up and running. But yeah, this has been wonderful. Big shout out to Jay getting us sorted on this so that we can have all these nice little production value as well. Like. Any other person I know would be like, yeah, let's just get the two people in front of a camera and do this. Jake got the whole setup with all these links and videos to show in real time with the OBS, like really excellent production quality to do this in one take and give us the quality that you guys got to enjoy on this video. So we really appreciate Jay. And Marxist, again, thank you for walking me down memory lane, man. I remember being a spectator to a lot of these events and a lot of these the TF2 scene, because I couldn't break into the TF2 scene with my gameplay, but I still got to enjoy it and participate, and so it was really great reminiscing on a lot of these things. You said so many names where I was like, I remember that name.
Yeah, it was a good time. I'm always happy to talk some more. I mean, I still am, and two, if they want to make these a bigger series, I still have contact with quite a number of people. So
yes, please.
Yeah, so once you pick them and we can forward them through, I'm sure people would be willing to talk for an hour or two. So
I got in contact with Sal. I know that. I got in contact with Sal. I haven't been able to reach out to DJC though.
Well, DJC like disappeared from the internet. And I can't remember there, so I may misremember this, but DJC lived off of some sort of annuity. Like he had a family member die and there was money in trust or something. Like there was some kind of arrangement like that permitted him to not have to really work. But then somebody figured out like where he lived and that endangered the arrangement. And so he just disappeared. And so it may be hard to find him because he ghosted everybody as far as I recall.
Oh.
Anyway,
that's tough.
It's been a phenomenal hour and a half with you. No, 2 hours now. It's been a long morning for me.
Yeah, you already casted, so
I got to cast some awesome TF2 games, then run us through this nice little interview. Yeah, it's been great. TF2's great. That's all I have to say to close this out. Any final word, Marxist, you want to say? I kind of led you to a final word, but any real final words now?
Well, just thanks for continuing to watch the things that I participate in and keeping TF2 alive. Because I still watch, I still cast from time to time. I still play Goldrush every now and again. So, and I did a couple Boomer Pugs a while ago, and that was pretty fun too. So just good to keep it alive. Right. It's still the best shooter out there. So.
Oh yeah, hands down. And it's crazy to think that it's this good with like very little maintenance. Like the developers knew what they were doing when they put this thing together, and it's holding up. It's beautiful. All right. I guess with that, we're just going to kind of sign this off here. Thank you all for joining us here on Fireside Chats, the lovely little thing we do here for these interviews and just kind of catching up with people in the TF2 community. It's been wonderful, Marxist, truly wonderful. Oh man, that the quick fix meta. Whew, throwback. Anyway. Thank you all for watching, and hope you all enjoyed and learned something new, and take care.